Welcome to the regular Saturday meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. I'm Peter Halley, and let me just go over the ground rules first. And we are meeting virtually according to the state's law permitting virtual meetings to go forward. Due and proper notice has been given of the meeting, and our agenda, as well as our minutes of the last meeting, have been published on our website and by the town noticing this meeting. We're going to proceed by video. This is being recorded, so if anybody desires, they can, blank out the picture if there's something embarrassing in your background that you want to obscure. And just be aware that anything you said is going to be on a recording available for people to see today and in the future. I'm going to, I'll recognize people who speak. We'll go through committee members first and any members of the public afterwards as we go through the agenda. So let's proceed. I've got, excuse me, I have a puppy here who doesn't want to be ignored, but
another puppy.
He's just, he'll be 1 year old on the 27th. So we have a quorum present. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today's meeting?
So moved.
Okay, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise a hand. And it looks like voting members are in favor of approving the agenda, so the agenda is approved. The minutes of the last meeting, they've been distributed. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
So moved.
And a second? I take that as a second, Kathy. All those in favor, raise a hand. Good. Minutes are approved. So let's get started with the agenda. Let's see. We've been called to order. We got a membership count for quorum. And so I think the only actual new member who has been sworn in since last meeting is Pamela Swan, who will join us, I think, momentarily.
She's here.
So, welcome. It says here on the agenda that I'm to welcome you. Welcome to our August group.
You're muted, Pam.
You're muted, Pam.
Yeah.
Thanks. I was actually sworn in before the last meeting, so I'm good.
Well, welcome again.
Thank you.
You're doubly welcome. Okay, so why don't we move right into the agenda and hear about where the STR working group is and what I want to do before we conclude the meeting is have some sense of agreement on what, if anything, we are going to do between now and the town meeting and at the town meeting, if we have somebody who will either go and represent us, or I can get the moderator to make a statement for us. So Peter, why don't you move us forward?
Okay, we had a meeting last Tuesday evening. It unfortunately continued more along the lines of much talk and not very much action. The talk was focused on, again, on data collection. We heard from the new data aggregator what they're doing, but they don't have the vital piece of information yet, of course, which is the Kentucky Real Estate Board data that appears to be coming at the end of this month. So we'll see. The most important thing, I think, for our purposes that came out of the meeting, in the course of the questioning, I had the opportunity to, well, let me back up a second. They continue to have the discussion about policy levers and goals and what have you, and it's a lot of chit chat that doesn't really accomplish much. But in the course of that, I had the opportunity to make the point that these goals that our moderator, or whatever they call the people from that are sort of coordinating this thing, never states that that one of the goals is to make sure that all parties on Nantucket, i.e., all owners, whether voting on Nantucket or just seasonal, should be treated the same. Something that obviously is the basic tenet of our position. And of course, her action was, oh well, we haven't, none of this stuff talks in terms of this, but it's sort of implied, blah blah blah. But the bottom line was that one of the members came out very strongly in support of what we were saying, and others seemed to be nodding along. No one came out against it. It seems to be, I think, based on what I was seeing there, accepted now as sort of an understanding that that we will be treated the same. And that's obviously very important to us. There are no guarantees yet until we see the final, there's a final document. But Kathy, you were off by that time. But I can say that was the most important thing from our perspective to come out of the meeting. There'll be another. All right. The other thing that came out of this was at the very end, the moderator said, "Well, should we have a statement issued by the STR working group to go to the community?" Obviously there's a lot of, as everyone has seen, a lot of back and forth in the Inky and mailings and what have you on Article 60, particularly. And obviously, and the STR position, of course, is to, along with the town finance committee and the select board, is to not make to table it effectively or vote it down, just to allow us to go forward with our work. And so the idea was, should we sort of tell everybody what we've been doing, so that at least they know that there is some hope for the future, that there will be something coming out of the STR group. And in theory, that sounded pretty good. And so she was going to draft something and circulate it, which she did. The problem is, and I guess I can circulate it now. I guess Kathy can circulate it to the group. The problem is, at least on initial read through, it's lengthy. It's about a page and a half, and there's a lot of discussion about all the the ins and outs of the study and blah blah blah, and all those things we're looking at. But it sort of, to me, underscores the fact that this is a massive bureaucracy of effort, and that it will feed the beast of those who say, hey, we're never going to get anything out of these people. Let's move. We can't wait for them. They'll never get to a decision. I read it again this morning. It was not quite as bad in the light of day as it was yesterday when I got it. So I think it was something like we might want to talk about. Obviously, the town has come out very clearly to vote this down. The finance committee has as well. I must say, I think, the Inky, what's her name, Marianne Stanton, has been trying to play it both ways, but she keeps basically, I read between the lines that she is anxious to have an up or down vote on, at the town meeting. She doesn't want, she keeps talking about not putting this off, let's get, it's too divisive, blah, blah, blah. So that's not particularly helpful. But that's where we are, Peter. And so I think I'm certainly would like to hear what others think about how, whether we should, as either STR group, or whether maybe ACNVT should issue a short statement about why it ought to wait. But that's the question on the table.
So the Marion Stanton issue, I think it is an issue.
Yeah.
That she's got a voice and she's got a paper. Right now, she has been printing things from both sides of the issue, and I even had one in there sometime in the last 2 weeks. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, because I I'd become alarmed actually by, there's been this constant drumbeat of pro Article 60 letters to the editor, both in the Inky and the Current, and making sort of moderate statements, with many which were totally untrue, about the benefits of Article 60 and the lack of any adverse effects from Article 60, and my particular one basically called that into question. But leave it as may, what struck me in Marion Stanton's editorial on the issue is just let the chips fall as they may. Have an up or down vote and let the chips fall as they may. And that those words, they're not responsible words because we don't know what the chips are. And that's part of what the short-term working group is trying to tease out by getting the data. It seems fairly obvious that if the number of short-term rentals goes down to, what is it, about 100, something like 100 out of about 2,000, is that the way the math works?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very extreme supposition that UMass is taking. And when I asked them why, basically the language of Article 60 is so ambiguous that you could interpret it that way, that really the only people who are guaranteed the right to do short-term rentals are year-round people. And there are only 114 homes that are year-round out of the 2,000 and something. So that's how they're interpreting Article 60, which of course is extreme. It's a reasonable interpretation, but it's not the only one. So that's the problem, is too many interpretations of the language, which I think John Giorgio confirmed it's too ambiguous.
Yeah, but I was just going to say, that's important what Kathy just said. For those who don't know, John Giorgio is town council, and a subgroup of the working group, I spoke with him on Thursday, and he made it very clear that, and I guess he did to the select board as well, that he finds Article 60 as a legal matter problematic, and I think that needs to be underscored to the public as well.
So let's say in a typical debate setting, and this is a debate, what you would call is that 114, if that's the right number, is a worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. But it's a not out to lunch worst case scenario. It's just, if Article 60 were interpreted in the most restrictive way one could interpret it, which is not unreasonable to think that might happen, because you have two issues. You have lawsuits by individuals saying you have to interpret Article 60 this way. You've got vague language, and you have a history of lawsuits. So it's possible that some court in the future could decide in that way. So that's a worst case scenario. And I think, at least from where I sit, I don't rent my house, but I think that the economy of Nantucket is largely a tourist, resort destination resort-based economy. And if you were to take some percentage of the available beds out of the economy, which in this case would be well over 50% of the beds, I think, there's going to be a direct and problematic effect on what is left. And so when you go up there to visit, it may be fewer people around, but there's also going to be fewer restaurants and fewer flights and fewer this and fewer that. And you might wish you had some crowds back as a resort destination goer. And so I think that Article 60 presents a danger to everybody. That's number one. Number two, there was one of the letters to the editor was by a non-resident purporting to say all non-residents think alike as I do. I can't remember what this fellow's name was, and basically saying he is very much for Article 60. But while there have been no surveys of non-residents, and so one of the things I'd like to do today is sort of get everybody, because everybody on this in our group, whether you've been sworn in or not, is a non-resident. Just make sure that we're on a similar sheet of music about this stuff. But the only survey I'm aware of any attitude with regard to short-term rentals is what I'll call the Monomoy survey, which is not a survey which I would place great reliance in, but it's the only survey one has. And what a group in Monomoy has, I guess, an area group which purports to represent Monomoy people, and they're quite active. And they did a survey of, and I think they had something in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 respondents. And the questions themselves were not very good questions. But what stood out for me in their survey, they basically asked people whether they were for or opposed short-term rentals. I'm not going to give you the exact wording, in two different ways. And one, the way I put it is short-term rentals by commercial interests. And people were overwhelmingly against short-term rentals by commercial interests. One of the problems, though, is there's no real definition of what a commercial interest is. And one of the problems is that every rental has a commercial aspect to it. So you have the Monomoy residents who responded saying we're against short-term rentals by commercial interests. But then they sort of asked it in a different way. Are you against people renting their own homes for short-term rentals? And the percentage that was against commercial interests was for people renting their own homes as short-term rentals. So in both instances, I think we're well over 2/3 support. So I think in the commercial interest issue, it was 70 or 71% were against commercial interests. In the sort of you and me issue, that is what I want to be covered by the same regulation I want to have somebody else covered by. It was something like 68 or 69% didn't want to prohibit that kind of rental. So I think there is at least a survey that would say that people are generally in favor of short-term rentals, so long as they're not by commercial interests, whatever that means. So where does this all lead me? I just want to get a feeling for where this group is. What we've done in the past, we have taken the position that whatever the town meeting does, and they're only voting residents who are allowed to vote at the town meeting, that you have to be a resident. Whatever they do, they should treat non-residents the same. And I think the underlying theory was that instead of taking a position for or against short-term rentals, you take a position where a sentient person would not likely want to restrict their own ability to rent their houses. And that ought to protect us. But I think we are beyond the sentient person situation here, where there's just a lot of propaganda one way or the other, which is swaying people in ways that they may end up voting against their own interests. So that's my comment on this. I just want to see where other people are, the option, what should we be doing from this point out to get through the annual town meeting, and in my hopes to get through to a later meeting in the year, which is apparently been docketed, in which the position taken by the working group, which we have Peter representing our committee, can put forward what it thinks is the optimal solution to a yet undefined problem.
Amazing. Ralph is raising his hand.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You need to unmute yourself, Ralph.
Just a point of information. Is it a good assumption that the respondents to the Monomoy survey were mostly non-voting homeowners?
It probably is, yeah.
Like 90% or something like that.
Yeah.
I think, by the way, Peter, also, I'm sorry, there was another sort of survey. There was a public meeting early on with the STRWG group of residents who could participate. And you may recall there were sessions where there were breakout sessions, so to speak. And they were groups of 5 or 6 Nantucket, short-term and residents and the seasonal residents on those calls and in person. And overwhelmingly among that group, it sort of backed up where the Monomoy people were. No, they don't want they don't want commercial, and to that they mean, quote unquote big corporations again, or whatever that means. But they do want the ability to carry on the long-standing tradition, which is, that everybody seemingly claims that Nantucket has had for STRs. So that's, I think it's clear that that's where the majority is on this issue. Let me also say, by the way, just to bring people up, that's one further thing. The working group is this call we had with John Giorgio was very helpful, because it should have been had at the outset, and as opposed to months later. But it made it very clear that, look, we first have the opportunity. There are two. We have a zoning. There's a zoning bylaw, and then there's a general bylaw. And you have a zoning bylaw, arguably, which make it very clear that STRs are allowed. Okay. And then you link that to a general bylaw, and so that and zoning bylaws only deal with use. Okay, only deal with use. So the idea is that yes, everybody can use their house for an STR. However, that has to be linked with a general bylaw, which deals with the operation. And there's where you can limit. For example, you have opportunity to say, okay, look, you can only rent one time per week, kind of thing, or you can only rent out a certain number of days, or whatever that may be. Whatever that concern is about, which we've always talked about, which is the noise, the congestion, the real that's at the heart of what a lot of the concern is. And those two together will be able to deal with this. And unlike this Article 60, which appears to be, I guess they're trying to back it in as a zoning bylaw, which would arguably totally restrict STRs, and in a very sort of permanent way, which is a problem. Anyway, and I think the STR group is going to clearly go this way now. I think they're going to push forward with a zoning bylaw recommendation, followed by a general bylaw, and the only issue is going to be what are the levers, what are the restrictions within that operational use.
Yeah.
I think it was just one further addition just onto that, which I found fascinating, that John Giorgio said, was that technically, so Article 60 is a zoning bylaw, so therefore it automatically grandfathers anything that's currently legal. And then he emphasized that because although the town believes that short-term rentals are legal, the lawsuits say they aren't. So you could, if the lawsuits come down and say they're illegal, then basically they're not allowed anywhere, and neither will any kind of rental, because the word rental is not used in our zoning at all, as not defined as an accepted rental, accepted residential use anywhere. So it's very risky. The whole thing is very risky. And like Peter said, we have to have that zoning bylaw that says they're legal, and then link it. So I think what the town tried to do that last year with 39 and 42, but they didn't make that connection. They didn't make it obvious that that's what they were trying to do. And that's what I think that the short-term rental group, I agree, is going to go that direction. And the general bylaw will be something that if you want to add stuff to it every year or change it every year, town meeting can do that. And it's only a majority that needs to change that. So I also think that we may take a step-by-step approach and just put in something that's not overly stringent to begin with, because knowing that you now have a bylaw that you can adjust every year depending on what you find. And until we get the data, we don't know if there is a problem in the growth of them. We already have a regulation about noise and nuisance, and that's Article 39. That needs to be linked to this zoning bylaw too, I think, Peter, the existing stuff, right?
Yeah, I think the key here is that also that John said was that if we get the if we get the zoning bylaw passed, which makes it clear that STRs are legal, and then it's then followed up with operational restrictions. But the point being that once you get the STR being legal, that will knock out the lawsuits. Yeah. That's the end of the lawsuits, which is very, very important. That's probably the most divisive part of all this. That you've got people, you've got Act Now, with a lot of money suing, homeowners who don't have any way to really defend themselves here. So that would eliminate it. And that's another.
And the other danger of 60, I think, was he said if it passes, then the short-term rental work group is kind of out of luck. Yeah. Because there's nothing we can do. That becomes the law, and now you're stuck with it. So that's another danger.
Yeah. So
Donna's got her hand up, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I too was. I listened to the select board meeting, and when John Giorgio spoke, I think, as Peter Collin was saying, I think he really has to be a guiding light in this whole thing, because when he was talking about the bylaws and so forth, and the state and so forth, the STR group is rudderless. I mean, if you don't know what your law is going to be, how are you going to create something or follow something? I think it negates a lot of what the STR group is doing, and the fact that there still isn't any data. It's just unfortunate. And Peter Kahn is going to all these meetings. It's really sad. The other thing is, at the end of the meeting on Tuesday, when the select board asked if there were anybody in the public who wanted to speak, one hand. I think that's telling. Maybe people are tired of it. Maybe people are totally confused. I think, okay, the Article 60 is problematic, but so is the other side. The whole idea of this, was it Granicus or Graphicus, was supposed to bring these two groups together to create something that would be beneficial for both ideologies. That hasn't happened yet. And I think it's very concerning. But I think John Giorgio should be much more involved in this. I think it might save time and get us to some sort of a solution faster.
Well, the next step is the town meeting. I agree with Peter that it would have been nice if John Giorgio or one of his partners had laid this out at the beginning. And indeed, I think in the first or second meeting, there was a legal presentation, which was one of the worst legal presentations I've ever seen. Yeah. Because there really has been no sort of end game structure. The structure so far in the working group has been they tried to define the problem, but nobody's going to agree on what it is, whether it is. And then what is the data that would at least give you some clue as to what the real facts are on the ground. And we're about to have that. Or it looks like we're about to have that. And I'm sure there'll be quibbles about, bias one or another way with the data, but people will be able to figure out where it came from and how much they want to rely on it. But I think—
Don had raised his hand, Peter.
Excuse me?
Don had raised his hand.
Oh, okay. Well, as soon as I'm finished, I'll come back to Don. Thank you. I think where I was going on this is that what we need to do is what is it that we're here today to do, if anything? And I think one is to adjust our position or not adjust our position, and to say what should our next step be. I do think that we need to be taking a position instead of denigrating the working group, of basically saying, yeah, it's taken a long time to get where we are, but we're just starting, the working group's just starting to get up to speed and get the information it needs to conclude its work. And therefore it's worth waiting for. Okay, so Don, I'm sorry, you have a comment?
I was just wondering if the committee has gone over the rules and regulations of hotels and bed and breakfasts and what they are.
Could you speak up a little bit, Don? I'm sorry, my speakers are not very good.
I was wondering if the rules and regulations of hotels and bed and breakfasts, specifically from the town of Nantucket, what those contain, and would they give some comfort to short-term rentals? I'm not saying they should take every single regulation, but ones that seem most apropos to short-term rentals.
Well, we certainly have discussed, and then there are different zoning requirements and occupancy requirements that affect hotels and bed and breakfasts, just with regards to the number of bedrooms and personnel that can people that can stay there. I think what I'm hearing you say is, we should review those for purposes of dealing with a general bylaw which deals with the actual operation. And by the way, again, Kathy can speak to this as well. But the article that was at 39 that's in existence, John Giorgio was saying, basically has a lot of it in it. I mean, the controls are there. Whether it's the Board of Health to be able to review this, and to the registration there. So it's some fine tuning that needs to be done. We've been waiting for all this data, and as one of the members said, there's not, this data may not tell us a hell of a lot. We may, it may not tell us a hell of a lot more than we already know. So
I think on the commercial, the commercial issue of stopping commercial, I don't think it even matters if we get any data on that. Whether there's 1 or 200, people don't want any more. That basically, so we don't really need the data to move forward on that one. And the other ones, we're really, we have all these policy levers we could choose, and if the data doesn't support them, then I don't think we should do them. But we'll see that, and I think it's interesting. 2 things we know. One is that the aggregator so what he's done is he's presented a whole bunch of different places you can go get independent data. And he picked the criteria for choosing them based on its best match to what the work group wanted to have questions answered for. In other words, over time, certain questions couldn't be answered in some sources, but in others. So he went through a very good process, I think, of picking the aggregator that's going to give us the best data and the kinds of data that it will have. And he can get that data very quickly. That's all from the online platforms. So that's what would be there. And the NAREB data, they reported in that they've got 96% of the data uploaded. So each individual real estate agency had to upload into a portal their data. And then it won't take long once that's in there for them to blend both of them. But I found it interesting in looking at the data that I circulated earlier, which is the one of the aggregators that they're looking at getting, probably not the ones they'll select, but it shows, and I think you looked at it, a very stable population of STRs. I think it was 1,300, and that's pretty much within 5 or 10. It doesn't change much in the past 3 years. So if that's true, and I don't know if it is, the real estate people, like Dawn Holgate, who's at the she was a select board member, and she mentioned at the select board meeting that they're seeing a drop on the real estate side. So it doesn't look to me like there's a huge growth in it. And, you know, I don't know why that would be, and I don't know if that's true, but that's part of the thing. Once they put it together, we're going to have the answers pretty quickly that we need to decide.
Well, I think that combined, I mean, if it turns out, and I think Kathy's right, that the actual STR rentals are stable or actually going down, if that's correct, combine that with some economic data, which I'm not sure we're going to get. You know, we have this Massachusetts study, but you know, the Act now challenges it because it was paid for by the Copley Group. But the fact of the matter is independent. This Massachusetts UMass group is, you know, got some integrity. But if we could, you know, the economics are, you know, speak volumes to me anyway. You know, I mean, you know, if you limit the number of STRs, you know, it doesn't take a lot of rocket science to figure out you're going to, you know, it's going to have a significant effect on businesses in the town. And that's, you know, the town, the voters at the annual meeting are not going to, you know, they're business people. They're people who, you know, they're working people. They're not gonna, you know, support that. So, you know, I'm not sure we need a lot more data. That.
So John, you had another comment?
I didn't hear the answer to my question, whether they were really reviewing these.
Again, can you speak up? I'm sorry.
I didn't hear the answer to the question. Are they reviewing these regulations for hotels and bed and breakfasts? Because this is the nut of the problem. They want people to so-called act properly and for things to be named in a certain condition with this. And then, you know, people like the Monomoy Group cannot have a problem with that if things are regulated properly.
Well, I think that
So
you know, like Peter said, there's already in law, you know, that you're subject to a home inspection. You have an occupancy limit that's part of the regulation. This is already in the law.
Insurance requirements.
Insurance requirements and so forth. So that's already done. We can add to it. But I think it's mostly there.
And that's for hotels, you mean, and bed and breakfast?
Hotels already have their own rules. And the ones that they put in Article 39 are similar. They're appropriate for a private home, but they're similar.
So anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, what do we define as commercial? I mean, I guess you could say the Copley Group's activity is commercial because they own 14 units, although Norm Levinson could have put them into all sorts of individual trusts with his, and avoid that to some extent. VRBO and Airbnb are not commercial. They're representing individual homeowners. So they're not commercial. So what is commercial other than Marriott buying 10 units on the island or whatever?
Gene, I think it comes down to simply what's developed. Commercial is a lousy word, and it comes down to I think exclusive use or predominant use of a STR by people who do not live in the building at all. So in other words, it's the use of the home is solely to rent out as STR year round or at any time. In other words, there's no private individual or the owner of the home whoever lives there at any time. For example,
if I owned a second home on the island, which I just used as a rental, short-term rental, that would be considered commercial?
No.
Arguably, yes. If you rent it, I know it's just like, for example, the guy that
only rented it. I didn't use it. I didn't have any family.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I think well, there's an exception being talked about for people who are residents or if this is a second home. If it's your primary, if it's the only thing you own, for example, the guy in the Wall Street Journal, who remember that he saw, he bought this big house on Cliff Road, right? And he said, hey, this is a great investment. I'm going to just, I make more money renting this thing out, a short-term rental. I don't intend to live there. This is my business. That's what they're talking about.
I got you.
Yeah, but it's a very hard to come up with a definition that can't be worked around. And that this is the challenge that I, made, I guess, months ago, 9-10 months ago, on this issue. And I have not yet heard anybody come up with a definition that anybody's happy with. Other than it's like the definition of pornography, right? You know it when you see it. And that's not a very adequate definition.
Well, Great Barrington, Massachusetts has one that has passed muster with the Attorney General in Massachusetts. So that's one of the ones that has been proposed that we look at because it's already.
Have you seen it? Have you seen that? I have not seen that language.
Yes.
Yes. If you could send that to me, I'd like to see it at some point.
Yeah, it basically defines commercial in a way that we could use. And I think there was another one that Jim Sulzer had from, I don't know where that was, New Orleans, not New Orleans.
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs, yeah.
Palm Springs.
That's the true person, one, which seemed to be. So there's two options, I think, that have been put forward. I'll see if I can find that Great Barrington one.
Yeah.
Can you share that with the group, Kathy?
Yeah, I'll try to find it. I tried to look for it the other day. I know I've read it and I can't find it. So my hard drive is a mess right now. It's like my desk, everything's scattered. So yes.
I guess, Peter, look, the question to me in my mind is, do we come out with a statement before the May 6th town meeting that is similar to what we sent to the select board? Do we simply make that public, that we as a group urge a no vote on this and to allow the STRW group to continue its work? Or do we go beyond that? Or could we go beyond that and take a position on Article 60 specifically, saying this is bad? And that's I think, to me, that's what we can talk about that. But that's, to me, the sort of. Yeah,
I mean, an additional thought is that one of Linda Williams' articles is the opposite of Article 60, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. 59, what's 59 and 60? Which one? 59 or 61? Which one?
I don't have the number in my brain, but I think there's just one of them that is more or less the opposite of Article 60. It makes STRs
legal.
Well, they're already legal. Let's put it that way. They're already legal, Peter. But
no. That's the point. That's the point, Peter.
They're not.
Unfortunately, that's the point. They're not. There's no zoning. There is no zoning bylaw.
I'm being a little bit more sophisticated, I think, and that is that people can do it, and there are 3 court cases that say no, they can't do it because what you're just saying. Yeah. But the island, the powers that be in the island, the administration says no, they are legal because they're customary or something like that. And what this other article does is in written words say you can do it. What we're missing now is these written words. We're talking about course of conduct instead. And I don't know what that number is, but we could say, our position is this ought to be pushed forward to the fall and let the working group come up with whatever it's going to come up with, because it's just hit its stride. But if you're inclined to decide it now, vote for this other article instead of Article 60, because Article 60 is a very, very severe medicine, which you're not going to like. It's like, it's not going to do what you want it to do, and it's going to do something much worse.
Just to clarify, the 2 articles that Linda Williams has, one's 59, one's 61, all they do is change zoning definitions. So at the beginning of the zoning bylaw are the definition of terms. There is no definition, for example, for short-term rental there. So that's one of the issues. But all she did was she defined accessory use to specifically include rentals. So therefore, from that lawsuit contention would go away. And then the other one defines commercial. The word commercial is defined in the zoning bylaw, and she excludes renting of homes from commercial definition. So that those two together make the lawsuits moot. And I think that's what town council said. On the other hand, they're not linked to the bylaw, a general bylaw for regulation, which he is recommending. So it's sort of missing a little piece at this point on those two, but those would stop the lawsuits.
Yeah.
And I think what Linda said at the select board meeting, and I think was that she's planning on proposing a sunset clause for those to have them sunset when the short-term rental work group is finished with its stuff, so that they're just a temporary protection from the lawsuits. On the other hand, I think the zoning lady, Judy said she hates sunset clauses. So
yeah, but it's a different kind of. I heard that part of the meeting because that was right at the end. Leaving sunsetting aside for the time being, because right now she hasn't proposed it, but they would be amendments to whatever she proposed. And given that I think our general thrust in this group is not to have 60 enacted as a practical matter, we would take the good instead of the perfect of those two articles with the sunset clause.
mm-hmm.
And that would achieve the goal that we have, which is to, have a more reasoned approach to this whole thing. So we could take that position, which would be very, very different than what anybody else is saying, right? I don't think publicly there's not been anything written to support her two articles that I've seen. But it's a kind of if these are going to be taken up and voted on, then that those two should be passed in lieu of Article 60. So that is a something we could say, and I think we could logically say it. Peter?
I'm a little nervous. I guess I'm nervous, maybe not the right word. I'm a little concerned with us going out there and being so pro STR in the sense that we have, I think that's where ultimately we're going to end up. But there are plenty of seasonal people who don't want, who I talked to who don't, who don't want STR, or don't like them in their neighborhood or whatever it may be. Yes. And I don't agree with that necessarily, but I like our sort of, I like where we've been, where we sort of get the best of both. We sort of piggyback on this, where we're treated the same, and we know it's likely that the SPRs are going to be voted in such a way that they're going to be allowed to go forward. And then we get the benefit of that. I think that we've got to be spending, using more of our effort to talk about that this is, we need more, we need to let the SDR group go forward and come up with its points first before any of these articles are decided. And maybe what we should say is, look, rightly or wrongly, take John Giorgio's position that Article 60 creates legal problems right now. Whether you agree with it or not, there are problems with the article, and therefore it should not be dealt with at this point.
Well, the renowned lawyer who opposes John DeGiorgio is Emily Kilvert.
Is she a lawyer? Is she a lawyer?
No, she's not. That's my point. But
yeah.
She has given her legal opinion in this week's Inky that DeGiorgio is all wrong.
Well, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen it.
I did read it. Yeah.
It's in the Nantucket Current. It's a very good article. by Jason Grazadai.
When was that? When was that? Today or
Yesterday?
no. Okay,
It was the 13th. It was on the 13th. But so is she basically saying that Giorgio's interpretation that if Article 60 passes, all the current STRs are grandfathered is because of state law is incorrect? I mean, he should know that. And I think part of the problem here is we're getting so confused with all the what ifs and how it works. I think if the town attorney has come out and said, fine, if this thing passes, all the existing things are grandfathered, so it doesn't change what's happening right now, and it also causes difficulty in future regulation. Like, that's an important message to get across, is that we can't support this because it doesn't really, I don't know how to put the wording, but it doesn't really do what the article is setting out to do. It doesn't really change a whole lot and just causes problems in the future. I mean, is that?
However, if the court cases come back and say they are illegal, then nothing is grandfathered. Everything's illegal.
Okay.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a vicious circle, and it's not going to solve anything. Yeah.
And it's a Gordian knot, which is so hard to, you can't in 2 paragraphs, or can we, in 2 paragraphs, come up with a logical solution.
No, but we could say something very close to what Giorgio said, which is it would be better to come up with a comprehensive plan. And part of the purpose of the short-term rental work group is to come up with this comprehensive plan. Instead of, looking for a silver bullet, let's find all the pieces that might make this work.
Well, wouldn't that be basically we should wait until the STR group finishes their work?
Exactly.
And then we could come out with a position supporting or criticizing. I would suspect it will be supporting, but I think it's premature to come up with something now, especially since there are so many questions and problems with what's going on with these issues on both parties. So I think we should wait.
Yeah, I think, look, I think what we would be doing is basically taking the position that we took with the town and adding to it what we now have is the Giorgio's position. In other words, saying, look, town council has said that X, Y, and Z, and given that, we continue to urge that we wait.
Move forward with the STR group. Is that what you're saying, Peter?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should support the STR group.
Yeah.
With John Giorgio's guidance, however.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John's got a question or an comment.
No problem with that. But I do think that at the end of the day,
for a while, I've been a bit confused about what this problem is that we're trying to solve. And it does go down to the definition. So I looked up in a legal dictionary, and there's a difference between a commercial operation and a trade. What people do in their homes when they own it and they spend time there and rent out, that's a trade. When it's commercial, it's the whole operation. I mean, they could own several properties in different places of the country, and the way it is run is like an enterprise, a company, not like people do locally to rent their home. So I think that distinction just sort of makes things a little clearer. I was thinking, like, if a farmer takes his goods to market and sells them, that's a trade. If there's an agricultural corporation that owns many farms, and actually the farmer becomes an employee, that's a commercial operation. So at least
well, then, Don, if you have then under that theory, like, what happens when you have two properties, single owner, 2 properties? Is that a trade or
you're part of the community?
Say again?
As long as you're part of the community at some juncture, then that would be a trade.
Well, okay.
I think it's
also
there's no employees.
Sure, you have employees. You're going to have employees. For example, you're going to have even in the FDR, you're going to have an employee to maintain the place to make sure.
Not an employee. They're a separate operator. You
hire no. You hire. You're going to hire if you're an owner of a home, and you're going to rent it out. Okay, you're going to have a manager. You could be yourself, but it could be mostly, and oftentimes it's somebody else to be there to make sure that it's under the regulations, that within an hour somebody will be there. In other words, there will be.
If you're hiring, that's a separate hire. That you don't have to pay that person's Social Security or Medicaid.
Well, it depends how it's set up. I mean, that depends whether it's an independent contractor or not. I don't think. I mean, personally, I don't think this is commercial versus trade issue.
I think we're getting into the weeds here, and this only solution that probably is in our grasp, and solution to what we're going to do next, is, as Pamela suggested, I like the word of comprehensive solution or whatever the exact word, but basically to continue down the path that we've been going down, which is we've already stated in writing to the select board that none of these things should be passed. And it's basically sort of reiterating our confidence that the well-functioning working group, and it's really starting to function, can come up with a comprehensive solution that passes legal muster, and some things about all the very valid legal questions that have been raised by town council.
Okay, by the way, Peter, I'm sorry, one of the other things that I forgot to mention that I think is very important now that I think that you triggered my memory, that the Giorgio said when he came out very strongly for our position that seasonal residents be treated the same as permanent residents or voting residents, because he made it, he finally came around to, what we had been arguing all along, that as a constitutional matter, although it's not obviously set, it has not been decided, it would be very problematic in the courts to treat us differently. So that's also, that's another, another reason why we ought to be supporting the Giorgio here. The only question, I guess, in my mind is whether you add to that, Peter, that we be treated the same. I'm not sure we want to get into that at this point. But.
Yeah. I find it, in my op-ed or the piece that I did for the Inky, I added that was the last sentence on that, and I thought it detracted from the overall. It's just a whole nother point.
Yeah. No,
but it sort of does raise. If 60 were to pass, I think what we and others would do is to be contacting the AG and saying the AG should not approve for reasons that audience would understand. But we're not there yet. Overall, I think at the end of the day, we're not arguing about, the regulations or anything else. I tend to think that this is all about how many STRs are too many STRs, and that whatever general bylaws might actually be enacted will eventually come down to, there's going to be a cap on the STRs, and so that takes me back to where I started, which is the worst case scenario is 60 passes and capped at 100. And I don't know that anybody in this group thinks that only 100 STRs is sufficient to maintain the economy of the island that, we are enjoying today.
Well, I would move, Peter, just literally to move this along. I would move that you be authorized to provide a statement that is I don't know who you present it to, but maybe or published, setting forth the position we just articulated.
And we could do the same thing we could say the exact same thing that the planning board said. We could say that we're we would recommend not to adopt Article 60 in deference to the ongoing short-term rental working group that has a meeting scheduled in the fall to present their findings. I mean, we could.
Yeah, but I would also. Yeah, but I think we want to add. I mean, I think the effect of adding strength of legal counsel's position. Would be effective. So I would just add that to it. You know, so somehow get in there, Peter, the decision of town council.
And is the idea that we would make this like a public statement or have the moderator read it or something like that?
I think it's important, Kathy, I don't think the public.
Yeah.
And I don't think the general public is tuned in to what legal counsel for the town has even said. You know, we need to keep summarizing.
Yeah.
So I think this is basically, we write it up for the select board, send it to the select board, and then we also send it or a version of it to the Yankee and the other one or other two.
Yes.
And with maybe copies to the planning board and the FinCom.
So Peter, is that an official motion?
Yes. You can. Kathy will write it up and she'll clean up my language.
Okay, can we have Pamela draft it?
Oh, you want me to draft it? Okay.
Do a first draft and send it to me, and then maybe we can work on it together.
I might defer to Kathy if she has a moment. I'm about to leave town for my son's wedding in California.
Oh no, don't put anything on my plate, sorry.
Okay, I'll do a quick draft and shoot it to Kathy and she can proof it.
Okay, so then the annual meeting. I cannot, I'm going to be in elsewhere on the date of the annual meeting. Is there anybody in this group who will be at the annual meeting, and if we have somebody who will be there, should they stand up and make some statement, or should we ask the moderator to make the statement, which would probably be basically what we're going to put in writing right now, and maybe embellished or something. Anybody going to be at the annual town meeting?
I'm out of the country.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
I'll be there till 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That may not be long enough.
I know.
And you could, I think you should just give it to Sarah Alger, Peter, and let her read it.
Yeah. So Kathy, if you were there, I think because of your position,
right. I don't want to do it.
No.
But you certainly, in that position, you could mention, oh, and by the way, this other committee has taken whatever position it is that we've taken. Okay, so I will exercise my own discretion as to what I want to say to the moderator on this issue.
So we moved and second. Did we vote that we're going to do this?
No, you need to vote.
We need to vote. Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor, raise your right or left hand. Let's count them accurately. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have to now scroll down to get the rest.
There. Gary's voting.
Gary's there. Pam was there. Me, Peter, Bill.
6. Looks like 6.
I 7.
Don's not voting. Don's voting. I guessed it, or what?
He's there.
Oh, he's for it. Okay.
2, 3,
too long.
4, 5, 6, 7.
All right, so it's unanimous.
It's a rare actual vote by Don instead of an abstention.
Well, something I could vote for.
You must be on the side of the right then. That's good. Okay, so that is.
Common sense.
We've discussed actually the working group and the annual town meeting. So now we're into the hybrid in-person meeting schedule. We now have a law that allows us to continue meeting remotely. I think I said I was going to undertake to contact the town, and I frankly can't remember whether I did or didn't, so I probably didn't. But I can get information about whether there is a hybrid meeting location that we could use this summer. I think if we're going to meet face to face, it probably shouldn't be until after most of the people have actually been sworn in. And so I guess one of the questions is, when is every...
How many more are we waiting on?
A lot. We're up to what, 9 now, and so we've got another either 5 or 6. Because
why don't we find out when Steve, Gene, and Donna are going to be on island?
Yeah.
Well, I'm on island, except for a few days around Daffodil after May 19th.
Okay, so you'll be sworn in before June. That would be. And
I'm returning on on May 22nd.
So you'll be before June 1st as well, you know, more likely. And Ralph, what about you?
The first opportunity I would have to be sworn in would be Monday, June 19.
Okay, so that would be before. Yeah, and I'm not going to be up there physically until Monday, June 19th. I think I'm gonna be there a couple days before, and then I leave, and I'm back and forth. But I can always, you know, fly up and back for a meeting.
When is Donna going to be there?
I'm not going to be there until July 11th.
Oh,
I couldn't back. So, you know.
Yeah, you'll okay.
I'll catch up.
Sounds like you know, third week of June we'll have you know, at least 3 or 4 new members, which would be great.
Okay, so that third week of June, that would be the Saturday. Would that be that Saturday before June?
Following the 19th, whatever the Saturday is following the 19th. So maybe it's
24th.
Like the last 24th.
Yeah.
I won't be on the island until the end of July, so I would have to be absent or Zooming somehow.
Yeah.
Can we hybrid?
Well, it was going to be hybrid.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, but it would be nice to be in person, sort of. You know,
Could we have a second meeting in person then, maybe later?
No, hybrid. Hybrid is, you know, hybrid. I'm talking about a hybrid where you have both. People could be.
Oh, I know, but I mean, an in-person maybe later on in the summer as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think all of the meetings after the June 24th would be hybrid.
In person. Yeah.
So there'd be an in-person component to it.
There'll be an in-person component. So in other words, the town will have to allow us to use that ugly trailer.
Yeah, the inside is not so bad. The outside is the ugly part.
So we can do our grocery shopping afterwards.
Right.
And what is the frequency this summer? You know, I guess there are 2 things that we're going to want to do in the future meetings, because now I will say we're over the hump of the annual town meeting for the time being. But I think we want to go back to what I think we would call regular order, which would be an early meeting with sometime in June with Libby. Start giving us the state of the island report. And that probably should be, you know, a month or so after the town meeting, as everybody digests what's happened at the town meeting. And then I think we want to hear from the new old transportation person, or, you know,
Mike Burns.
Yeah. And who then climate, Gary, your group.
Yeah. Well, you could hear, we have a new head. The new head of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Commission is a young woman from our Natural Resources Department. But there's something that I'm going to send you all. At the last meeting that we had of our committee, we prepared a report that we are sending to the select board, and it's a fabulous report. And what I said when I saw the report is, this is something I'm going to send to all of you, because it gives you a really good example of what projects we are working on, how far we have come on certain of them. And it's a real education piece for you. And we are presenting it every quarter. We have an update with the select board, and we haven't sent this to the select board yet. So I'm trying to figure out if we have to wait till we send it to them before I send it to you. But it'll give you a really good picture of all of the steps that are in the process, some of which have been completed, very few, and some of which are much longer term. It's a really good report about stuff going on, and that'll be a good update for you. I think perhaps that you ought to wait for me to send you that report, and after you see it, after you all see it all, if you would like to have the head of the new head, or even the old head, Vince Murphy, is now in charge of island-wide sustainability. He comes to all of our meetings anyway. But we can have either he and Leah, the new head of our committee, of the CRAC committee. But I'd like you to see that report first. And if you think you need more information about what's going on, then we could arrange for Leah or Vince to attend our meetings. I'm sure they would be glad to do so.
Okay.
I would also,
Did
Peter,
you also mention Libby to begin with?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, I missed that. Sorry.
and also, I think we all, I don't know where we stand. And you know, the DPW guy had resigned, and I don't know where they stand on getting a new head of Department of Public Works, but I think we want whoever is either acting or, you know, whoever is responsible, we need to get them in there. That's always an important one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And so some of this will evolve as these positions are filled. I think also in the past, we've usually had, you know, at least one select board member. My last year was Brooke Moore. And in the past, it's been, I'm just blanking on names, but we've had a variety over the past. And so think about which select board member, and what is there one up for election this?
Yeah, Jason is.
Yeah.
But Jason is
He's not running
again.
He's not running.
Not running
That
again.
the older guy, is his seat? Is his
He's
seat up
running.
again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's like
Doctor,
4
he's
people
running.
running for that seat.
Okay.
There's 2 seats open. There's because his is temporary, I'm guessing, and then Jason's is open. So there's probably 2 new people, right?
Yeah, but we are going to have one new one. We're going to have one new member of the select board, because at least one new one, because since Jason is not running again.
Right.
Right.
But we will
Because-
know that. We will know that after town meeting, after the elections. In
Yeah, I think we should probably see if we can get 2 members over the course of the summer, because I think one of our problems is, you know, we're on this committee, it's appointed by Libby. The appointments are confirmed by the select board, but I'm not sure that many of the select boards even know we exist. And I never get a response to anything I send them, as a response from anything I send them. So
Don't take it personally.
it's more to, I am. It's more.
Maybe it is personal.
More to sort of inform them about us than the opposite
Right.
way around. So we'll try a little bit of that. In any other area of particular interest that, you know, we don't have to set this in stone right now, but if there are other people that we think we ought to be hearing from, we can add them to the list and try to get them. I will say that it's going to be interesting if we have in-person meetings, as to, even if they're hybrid, as to how these folks will want to appear. You know, many years ago, they used to actually come to meetings. Now it's, you know, become very easy to attend by sitting in your house and getting on the screen, and they're all pretty busy.
Peter, I think Peter, another question though. I mean, we don't have to determine this now. And in the past, we've basically met monthly, you know, in the summers, or 3 weeks to 4 weeks every.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be with the STRWG being extended, there are going to be more meetings of that. you know, and we've been meeting ourselves here during the winter. I mean, it's amazingly every 2 weeks effectively.
Yeah.
You know, that's a lot of it's a lot of meeting time, particularly in the summer when people have families. So we'll just have to play. I don't know what you want to do about that.
Well, I think it's issue. We have two issues. One is, you know, what I would call things that are interesting for us to hear and do, and it's a benefit of being on this committee to meet with these people and understand what's going on the island. And the other is to have some sort of voice and a way to make it heard. And so it's basically a two-way street. We get something out of it. And hopefully they get something out of it from us. I think the sort of three weeks would probably be, go for an every 3 week schedule. And what we'll try to do is what we need to do is agree on when the next meeting will be, and then we can approve a schedule at that next meeting.
Okay.
And I guess, you know, just one other issue is, it's Saturday morning the right time to do it? Should it be some evening during the week, or is there some more convenient time to address what I think your real concern is? Is there a lot of conflicts with one's personal life?
Well, it used to be, I think, Saturday mornings because people were on, those who were commuting back and forth were on island. Now, with, you know, post-COVID, basically people are working remotely or on island, more, you know, full time, so to speak, once they get there.
Yeah, I think the history is that before we had these virtual meetings, we only met in the summer, and we met every 2 weeks, beginning in the beginning of June. We'd have town manager meet with us June 5th or something like that, whenever the right Saturday was. And every 2 weeks we had meetings, and by Labor Day we were done. So it was every 2 weeks then.
I don't think so. I don't think it was every 2 weeks, Gary. I don't know. My recollection was it was not that frequent, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think it was, yeah. And the other question we ought to think about is, let's suppose we meet with one or more members of the select board. Are there some issues that we ought to be talking with select board members about that are issues for the non-voting taxpayer community? What are the issues that, say, the people who, in theory, we're speaking for, providing views of the non-voting taxpayers? The question is, what are the issues that are on their mind, that particular group, non-voting taxpayers? And we used to try to find out how the select board feels about some of these issues. I mean, I don't know what issues, after we get finished with the short-term rental stuff, what are the key issues for us to want to get clarification from the select board on how they feel about it? I always go back to the fact that whatever happens, the non-voting taxpayers should not have a worse treatment than voting taxpayers.
Well, I think one of the things that come up at town meeting, as we talked about way back when, is this revision of the sort of town government, right? And right. So one of the things we would want to talk, assuming that's going to pass, one of the things we would want to talk to them about is the idea of having a non-voting taxpayer either in an advisory capacity or, you know, sitting on the town council or whatever, you know, whatever it is that, you know, that's, you know, I mean, but we could, that's something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think all good. Another question, I guess, is do we want to hear from like any of the boards, the other boards, like the planning board? We've had participation by the FinCom chairman in the past, and you know, these are, as you learn how things work on the Nantucket, the planning board is an awfully important board in terms of the quality of life for everybody, because they can approve commercial developments, and they can approve whole bunches of things that impact non-resident taxpayers. So anyway, so what next meeting? When should we have our next meeting?
Shortly after the town meeting, maybe?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, maybe 2 weeks after the town meeting.
Yeah, hold on. I may be out of, hold on. I'm out of the country.
I'm in the Amazon, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm out of the country starting March. I'm out of the country starting May 7th, May 18th. So I could do it May 13th. Saturday, May 13th.
I can't, but that's okay. Someone else can run it. I'll be actually in the Amazon, out of the country from the 10th through the 28th. So I'm gone in May. But that's okay.
So we have mid-May, or it would either be mid-May or the end of May.
Yeah, well, the end of, yeah, unfortunately, well, for what it's worth, at the end of May, I can't do it. I can't.
Well, you
it's
get
a very
into
important day. It's my 50th Yale reunion, so I can't miss that.
Okay.
No.
So should we tentatively schedule in May 13th then, and then maybe should I try to get Libby for May 13th, or save her until June?
Oh, I'd get her. Let's get her again.
Okay.
Are you saying May 15th or May 13th?
13th.
Okay, I'm going to be on island that week, but that weekend, I think I can still do the meeting in the morning. Okay.
Okay. Good.
I'm out of the country, but I might have internet access, so that's a possibility.
Good. Okay. Well, we'll figure all this out, and then we'll try to develop a schedule for the rest of the year, and I think we're going to need once most of the people at some point we have a requirement for elections within our own group, and I'm not sure exactly when that is.
June. I think we go by fiscal year, so we start a new fiscal year the July 1st, so we need to do it sometime in June.
Okay. So sometime in June, I think most people will be sworn in, and then we'll decide who will be chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. I think those are the three positions that we have to regularly elect, appoint, whatever. Okay. Anybody have anything else that's on their minds?
Peter, we usually meet with Libby at the beginning of June, but I don't know if May's too early.
Yeah.
Is like June 3rd or
yeah,
that's a possibility.
Yeah, that's when we normally would meet with Libby at the beginning of the season, kind of.
When are the town elections? They're the third week in May, so she might still be involved, but but town meeting is the week before.
Yeah, we want to do it in June, I think.
Yeah,
Libby.
I'm gonna take a quick look at my own calendar and see where I am when.
Yeah, I can't do the 10th. I don't need to be the 3rd and the 10th are the 10th. I might be able to do by phone. The 3rd is not going to work. Right. I could do the 10th by phone.
June 10th.
I could do the 10th by phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
The just so you know, the elections, the actual elections for the town are the 23rd of May.
Well, should we meet that? So should we do the 7th, the 13th of May, and then the 10th of June? Does that work?
Yeah, it works. It works for me.
10th of June works for me.
Yeah.
I'll be in Fairbanks, Alaska at my niece's wedding.
Is the 10th of June going to be a Zoom meeting or a hybrid meeting?
Zoom.
Zoom. Okay.
Oh, these will be Zoom until probably July.
Okay.
Late, very late June or July.
Okay.
And I'm starting to think, Kathy, you're a homeless person.
Yeah, that's okay. It'll just be really early in the morning for me. That's all.
Yeah.
Really early.
Okay.
Some of us would like to be in Kathy's suitcase. She does some great trips.
Very good. Is there a motion to adjourn, or anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Peter, just for clarification, I'll write something up. Do I just like have Kathy review it and then you guys will get it to where you want it to be?
I just send it to me and Kathy.
Okay, perfect.
I'll probably, do some editing on it and then.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay. Great. I appreciate it, Pamela. Yeah, thanks. Okay, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.